Cal State Bakersfield is deeply honored to host the 2022 CSU Grad Slam. A warm welcome to all. We are celebrating research excellence today with our students, faculty, staff, alumni, and community supporters from throughout the CSU's 23 campuses. And a very special shout out to our Roadrunner student competitors this afternoon. To be selected by your campus as one of only 2 students to represent your university in the CSU Grad Slam is an extraordinary achievement that reflects your brilliance and excellence. Congratulations. Here at CSUB, we know that it is through research that our students are able to unlock the mysteries of the world around them. And with that key, they also unlock with their own potential, their own talents, and an understanding of what they are able to achieve and conquer with their exceptional faculty members leading them on. The research discovery process reshapes our imagination and expands the capacity of our minds and hearts, leading to discoveries, solutions, and progress. Underlying the scientific breakthroughs and problem-solving applications of research, there's a deep well of hope. Hope that together our community can summon its own future. Hope that our best thinkers and dreamers are right here in the CSU. Heartfelt thanks for investing your time and passion into research. We're celebrating you today. Students, the very best of luck in this important competition. Know you are the pride of the CSU and the pride of California. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zelezny. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Jolene Koester, Interim Chancellor of the California State University, to offer welcome remarks. Chancellor Koester.
A little technical delay as my fingers found the right spots. Thank you very much, Dr. Jackson. Really nice to see you. And President Zelezny, always a delight to see and hear your wonderful words. To all the conference organizers, to the judges, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to be with you today. I want to begin by congratulating all of you who are participants, the finalists who get some special distinctions, and your proud family members who are also participating with you today. It's quite fitting that this Grand Slam, the CSU Grand Slam, is the occasion of my first official speaking engagement in this new role for me as CSU's interim chancellor. Of course, I have a number of very, very critical, important priorities for my work as the interim chancellor. Chief among them is restoring trust among the CSU's many key constituents on our campuses, in our communities, in Sacramento, in Washington, DC. In all of those areas, I'm going to passionately advocate for the resources that we need in order to advance our mission and support our students, support the dedicated faculty and staff that we have who carry out the work of the CSU. My highest priority and the source of the greatest joy for me is to support and shine a light on the extraordinary work being done on the 23 campuses of this university system. It's the work like the remarkable research that brings you here today that needs to have a spotlight put on it. We need to put a spotlight on all of the incredible faculty mentors who have inspired and supported you every step of the way to this Grand Slam event. You represent the very best of the extraordinary research, scholarship, and creative activities at the graduate level that occurs throughout the CSU. Graduate education is becoming increasingly necessary for workforce preparedness and professional success in California and across the country. To meet this growing need, the CSU is focused on assuring that we offer access to high quality, cost-effective programs, that we offer graduate programs that are aligned with California's workforce needs, and graduate programs that provide opportunities for California's diverse students. More and more students are pursuing graduate study in the CSU. In the fall of 2020, more than 40,000 students were enrolled in CSU master's and doctoral programs. In fact, more than 1/3 of all of the master's degrees awarded in the entire state are earned at the CSU. A further point of pride, the largest demographic among Cal State graduate students are historically underrepresented students, and more than 1/3 are among the first in their families to attend college. Now, I want to emphasize something that many of you already understand, that graduate study and research are intertwined. Graduate study with immersive research and discovery experiences allow students like many of you participating in this Grad Slam event to develop purpose, perseverance, and collaboration. It's those late nights in the laboratory or in the library or sitting at your desk, working away at home. It allows you the opportunity and the format to connect with faculty members. It gives you the joy of beginning to understand the specialized knowledge in your disciplines. And we hope it's allowing you to prepare for and pursue in-demand careers that are going to help you achieve higher salaries, lifetime security, but most importantly, the continued joy of exploration. And we want all of you to become change agents to assure that the world becomes a better place. The CSU continues to invest in graduate programs in a number of very, very important ways. The CSU has created and supports graduate pipeline programs, such as the California Predoctoral Program, which increases the pool of potential CSU faculty by supporting the aspirations of doctoral students. Similarly, our doctoral incentive program provides loans to CSU doctoral students, many of whom then return to CSU campuses as faculty members. In fact, the president of Bakersfield that we just heard from, President Zelezny, is a notable alum of that particular program. With an eye on workforce needs, we are continuing to expand our graduate programs for in-demand majors, especially where a graduate degree is now the minimum requirement to enter the field of work. In the near future, you're going to see that CSU explore legislation to expand professional doctorates in such fields as public health. And in May, the Board of Trustees is going to hear a proposal to expand so-called blended programs in which students can earn both a bachelor's and a master's degree on an accelerated timeline. I want to close by reminding all of you that when we see you, we see a symbol of success. We look at you. You are not only CSU proud, you are going to become the leaders of this state. So congratulations to all of you, to all that brought you here. Thank you to your faculty mentors who have helped bring you here. We wish you success and good luck to the competitors as you move to the next phase of the Grad Slam.
Let's begin. Alyssa Cooper, would you please turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hello.
Great, we can hear you. Are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Let's do this.
Okay.
One of the great things about being a biologist is that I get to talk about these cute little fur balls in the top left. You know, sea otters, they hold hands when they're sleeping and use their favorite rocks to break open shells to get at their food. Super adorable. But they're not always so cute and cuddly. If you're a leopard shark, especially down in Elkhorn Slough in Monterey, you might be worried that otters are going to steal your lunch. Leopards used to be top of the food chain in the Elkhorn Slough estuary, which, by the way, is just an enclosed body of water that connects to both the ocean and has freshwater inputs. But when we started making big efforts to reintroduce otters to the Monterey area after near extinction, they quickly started outcompeting the sharks for their top prey, which was crabs. But leopard shark diets are actually pretty flexible. So they switched to eating the very phallic-shaped fat innkeeper worms. And both these prey you can see on the bottom left. But the sea otters eat these worms too, so the sharks can't catch a break. And so some of you might be thinking, meh, sharks are scary and dangerous, and who cares if they're not able to find enough food? Less food for sharks means less sharks. But they actually play a really important role in the ecosystem, similar to sea otters. Both these animals are predators, and the feeding pressure they exert on their prey keeps those prey populations in check and ultimately keeps the ecosystem healthy. But what happens when there's two important predators in an ecosystem? Do they make the ecosystem twice as healthy? Or does their competition for resources actually harm the environment? It's dynamics like these that are really important for researchers to understand. And ideally, we'd be able to establish baselines prior to a big change. We'd assess the situation before it happens and then keep monitoring throughout and afterward. When we started reintroducing sea otters in the Monterey area, we didn't know that they'd colonize Elkhorn Slough. So we had some before data, but we didn't assess the situation with this particular change in mind. But we actually have the opportunity to make that assessment right now. Researchers have determined that other estuaries like San Francisco Bay and Drake's Estero and Point Reyes are potential areas for sea otter reintroduction. And both these areas have lots and lots of leopard sharks. So given that the most obvious competition between sharks and otters is over food, my team and I set out to see what leopard sharks are eating in one of these potential new estuaries, Drake's Estero. We did this by using a non-lethal way of obtaining gut contents called a gastric lavage or stomach pump. We'd fill the shark's stomach with seawater, and this would induce regurgitation of their last meal, like you can see on the bottom right. Looking at those gut contents, we found that those fat innkeeper worms were high on the list of prey, followed by crabs and large burrowing shrimp. So this definitely sets up a potential food fight in the future if sea otters ever colonize this area. Now, this was just the first step of many for this baseline assessment, but we can start to make predictions about how things would potentially play out. And it may even help us understand the current dynamics that are going on elsewhere. Ultimately, this data will help researchers implement best practices so that everyone wins, the sea otters, the leopard sharks, and the ecosystem. Thanks for listening, and I'd love to take some questions if you have any.
Thank you, Alyssa. While the judges are completing their scores, I'd like to ask you a bit more about yourself. And first and foremost in my mind is, how did you get involved in this research?
Yeah, this was a fantastic project. My advisor had money to look at estuaries and this idea of like a nursery function. So pregnant adult leopard sharks will come into estuaries because the water is typically a little warmer, which speeds up the gestation, like the growth rate of their babies. They'll have their babies and then the babies just kind of stick around, but we don't know why. When I sampled last year, we actually didn't end up catching any babies, but we caught a lot of subadult and adult sharks. So clearly, like there's something going on where like these adults are still coming into the estuary, maybe to feed or because of water temperatures, and that's really driving their presence here, even though we're not quite exactly sure how this or how this works. But yeah, it's been a fantastic way to kind of like get myself into the field, and so you know, especially during COVID too, we were able to go out there and do this sampling. We were really fortunate that we were able to implement proper protocols so we could like socially distance but still wrangle sharks at the same time and do this work.
Tell me about this shark wrangling. I mean, it's got to be very intimidating and maybe kind of weird to like
yeah,
induce vomiting
yeah.
in a shark.
It was pretty intense. So we used tended gill nets, and so like maybe the general public might think of gill nets as like think of them very negatively. Gill nets cause a lot of mortality in like bycatch. So the way we used them, we would set them out, and then as soon as we would see something caught in the net, we would just book it out into the water, and the sharks would be caught and thrashing, and so we would just wrangle them by hand. I did kind of this scooping method where like, okay, the shark's head is over here, and then I just kind of scooped it and then sucked it into my chest as like other people are helping me like turn it over and they go into this state called tonic immobility. If you get them on belly up, they'll kind of chill out, and then you can measure them and sex them, and take measurements, and then do the gastric lavage. But very happy to say we had no mortality. All of them swam away very happily, maybe not so happily after we had handled them. But yeah, it's quite a technique. I encourage everyone to try if they get the chance.
To try shark wrangling.
Yes.
Well, I can imagine the sharks are hungry afterwards, right?
It's true. Yeah, we just stole their last meal. It's true. They're going to go off and find some more things to eat.
So it sounds like you have a team that you were working with. Did you have other people on your team that were doing different research with the sharks than what you were doing and collecting different kinds of data to make different observations or conclusions?
No, actually. And, I'm incredibly thankful for all my lab mates and volunteers who, walked out to our sampling spots with me to go sample. Like, they just wanted to have the experience. I had a lot of undergrad interns and other grad students and even just friends who wanted to come out. And I really could not have done this is not a one-person research project. So I'm incredibly thankful for all the time and effort they put in. But for me personally, it also helped really increase my leadership skills too. Like, I've gotten so much out of this grad program besides just the science, like mentorship and leadership and just organizing, like logistics, like getting all the equipment together and driving out there, making sure everyone's there on time. They don't get a flat tire on the way. That's really been incredible to become more of a leader and organize, in the moment. I've sometimes had teams of 8 people, and we had 2 nets running at the same time, and both nets were catching multiple sharks at the same time. And so just kind of organizing everyone. Okay, you go get this shark and you handle this shark, and we're going to measure this and do gastric lavage on this shark. It was one of the best feelings I've ever felt to have that be such a complicated process, but to have it go so smoothly. It was pretty incredible.
Well, what an amazing experience for you and for your teammates. Just well done. So thank you for chatting with us, Alyssa. The judges have entered their scores and we're ready to introduce the next competitor. Dr. Vega.
Chelise, Raina, would you please turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hi there, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Great, we can hear you. Are you ready to go?
Wonderful. I'm just about ready.
Perfect, here we go.
Imagine a classroom that involves Play-Doh, a rubber goldfish, and stickers. Picture using scented markers, discussing our inner monsters, and giving ourselves permission to try things differently. It may surprise you that I'm describing the playful environment I create alongside my students at Cabrillo College. You might be wondering why I cultivate a playful approach in a classroom with all adults. I recognize this wanders outside of the traditional education model. Yet there is a method to my madness. Based on the Community College Equity Assessment Lab's CSEAL report in 2018, I learned that many of our students of color feel isolated, marginalized, and unwelcome in classroom spaces where the instructor is an all-knowing authority and students are merely recipients of knowledge. Based on that learning, I realized it's necessary for educators to recognize the value of our students' identities and lived experiences. We must invite their whole selves into the learning process. One way to invite students in as equals is through playful practices. As we dare to play together, I witnessed students transition from silent spectators who question their value to lively learners who take risks and actively join the knowledge creation process. To continue learning from my students, I want to engage in action research. I aim to explore how we can co-create a playful environment that is conducive to transformative learning in the community college classroom. To implement action research, my investigation will embrace both qualitative and quantitative techniques to identify what type of playful activities support collaboration, suspend judgment, and shape an equitable and effective learning environment. To consider the quality of students' experiences, I will invite anonymous written and artistic feedback to better understand which activities work best from their perspectives. Additionally, I will track how their relationship with course concepts may change over time with a Likert scale to explore if our playful environment supported the learning process. For example, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank your relationship with public speaking? 1 equals we don't speak, 10 equals we're soulmates. This student-driven data will inform how I shape my study and analyze the resulting explanation of playful environments and outcomes. The findings from this study will offer relevant insights to support learner empowerment, confidence, and healthy social connections. Together, we can create a playful path to student success. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Raina. While the judges are completing their scores, I'd like to ask you a bit more about yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm wondering is what favorite activities you like to do outside of this work, because it sounds like this work itself sounds like it could be a favorite activity.
It is, it's so fun. And, you know, outside of being a teacher student, you know, because I consider myself just always becoming as an educator, I really enjoy going out and about in nature, going on, you know, hikes out in Henry Cow. I don't know if anyone's ever been out there. But it's really beautiful, just a walk through the redwoods. And besides that, I love writing about my lived experiences, memoir based. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. I love being outdoors as well. In the work you've done so far, have there been any surprises for you in this activity?
Well, sometimes I feel like creating a playful environment with students is like controlled chaos, you know? So it's always surprising just to see how students really light up. You know, when you ask them to play with you in a college setting, they're shocked at first, but then once they lean in, it's beautiful to witness. So I think every twist and turn so far has been really a surprise and also an honor just to witness.
Wow, it sounds like you get a lot of laughter and joy in the classroom, which we don't usually think about.
It's true. And, you know, I think a lot of people assume that play means that it's less rigorous, but I think that that's a misconception, you know, because once we're more open to the learning process, then I think we can dig a little deeper and co-create something more together.
Yeah. So what are you thinking the next steps are? I mean, in terms of, one thing that we I think hear a lot is about the role of play in early childhood education, but we really don't hear a lot about the role of play in adult education. And so I'm wondering where you want to take this next.
Yeah, well, my dream, right, the pie in the sky idea is that I could travel around to different campuses, different college campuses, and really engage with instructors across all fields and just share the findings and maybe even brainstorm together, think of new ways to approach these topics that have for so long been, you know, traditionally the banking model of education. So I would love to work with other instructors and, you know, just in general administration of colleges across the board.
And when you mentioned the banking concept of education, are you thinking there of Paulo Freire's work?
That is exactly what I'm thinking of. Yes. Yeah.
So problem posing education instead of banking.
Right. And I guess in a way it's playful problem posing that I'm recommending or encouraging.
Yes, I hear that. I'm wondering if you think that there are any particular subjects that are more suitable or less suitable for this approach, or if you think it really could be in any subject.
Well, I think, you know, so far with my experience within communication studies, I think that it's really just beautifully situated to play with our student teachers. Yet, I think beyond communication studies as a field, this could be applicable to all other fields, you know, regardless of maybe how scientific it might be. I think there's really space for innovation for all different fields.
Well, thank you very much, Raina. The judges have entered their scores and we're ready for the next competitor.
Melanie Nicholls, would you please turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hello,
Great, we can hear you. Are you ready to go?
I am ready.
Okay, good. Perfect. Here we go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie, and I'm a PhD candidate at San Diego State. Before getting into my PhD program, I was working as an addiction counselor for 2 years in an inpatient rehab facility. Over this time, I was witness to numerous clients returning to treatment, feeling defeated by a relapse, along with having to mourn the many clients lost to overdoses. This was when I started to question the effectiveness of substance use treatment and how research could help it improve. So I set out to study the use of evidence-based practice in the substance use field. Evidence-based practice, or EBPs, are defined as therapies that have been studied academically and clinically, proven successful, and replicated by more than one investigation or review. Common EBPs that you may have heard of are cognitive behavioral therapy and motivational interviewing. EBPs are effective in behavior change, but it takes an EBP about 17 years to be implemented into healthcare practice, with only half reaching widespread clinical use. Some common barriers to implementation of EBPs can include lack of training or incentives, practitioners' attitudes and knowledge towards EBPs, and clinicians gravitating towards folk wisdom accumulated by peers, along with personal experience. Some facilitators for implementation have been greater perceived effectiveness, training resources, being a woman, and being younger. In the substance use field, only 19% of people with a substance use disorder are receiving any treatment, and 30 to 40% of patients don't receive treatment that's evidence-based. As you can see on my slide, I concentrated on California as it's a hotspot for treatment. Southern California is known as the Rehab Riviera, with over 1,100 rehabilitation and treatment facilities in just 4 counties alone. And many of these facilities have been found to not follow any sort of evidence-based standards. So I explored the attitudes and knowledge of providers in the substance use field in relation to evidence-based practices. The majority of our participants were female, aged 30 to 39, and had an undergraduate or master's degree. We found that provider knowledge of evidence-based practices and training are associated with more positive attitudes towards them, and that clinicians who perceive more limitations of EBPs are more likely to think that their clinical experience is more important than EBPs. Therefore, efforts to close the research practice gap should be concentrated on providers and increasing their knowledge and attitudes towards evidence-based practices. And training should be emphasized in the workplace and encouraged through incentives such as paying for trainings and offering time off to attend them. If we want to continue to best serve our clients in the substance use field and reduce relapses and overdoses, then we should aim to utilize evidence-based practices to their fullest capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. While the judges are completing their scores, I'd like to ask you some questions.
Sure.
So I have to say, listening to your presentation, I'm thinking about just the term evidence-based practices and thinking kind of how crazy it sounds that folks would be getting treatment that's not based on the evidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I was in treatment, I noticed a lot of how it's 12-step based, which the 12 steps have been, amazing for a lot of people and helped a lot of people, but it's technically not evidence-based. So when we have these programs that are more focused on like abstinence only and 12-step programming, they're not evidence-based treatment centers.
I'm wondering, what do you think is happening where folks are advocating for treatments that have no data to support their effectiveness? What do you think's going on with that?
I think it's just like maybe once some people start going through things that aren't evidence-based and it works for them, they think it'll work for everyone. But we really do need this backing of research that shows if they're effective, because, as we've seen in other research, sometimes placebos can help people while the treatment can help people too. So I'm not really sure. And then even with treatment centers kind of focusing on like the whole person and like being in nature helps you, but why does being in nature help people, and what exactly is making those steps effective in helping people with a substance use disorder?
Yes. Yeah, so interesting. I'm really curious, what are you hoping to do with this research next?
Well, I'm still a therapist right now and finishing up my dissertation, so I would love to continue working more in maybe the implementation field of making sure that these evidence-based practices are being implemented and used, rather than kind of continuing on with what we're doing in the substance use field. So I would hope to kind of stay in it and see where I could go with that and what research might best fit it.
Yeah, I wonder, if you have any thoughts about what the best ways to influence other practitioners to use more evidence-based treatment options. If you think that should be more policy-driven, if it should be like accreditation-driven, if it should be more word of mouth and just sort of peer pressure. What do you think would be most effective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think all of those things that you mentioned are great. So I know there's some policies in California that are being passed where they have to follow the ASAM criteria, which is like the addiction medicine criteria of treatment. And so just making sure that, having more stringent guidelines on these treatment centers and looking more into, places that are called treatment centers, are they actually providing that treatment? So having those policies and the accreditation. And I found in some research that there's been investigations into treatment centers in California that are just LLCs, and that anyone can really open up a facility and call themselves a treatment center when really they're not, being accredited, they're not being looked at. So just having more like stringent guidelines on what this actually means rather than letting everyone kind of do whatever they want in the field. And then again, in education, I have my MSW, and they really brought in the idea of evidence-based practice, learning CBT, learning all of these different treatment modalities that have been proved effective. So just continuing in education, and then also having jobs have more guidelines as well, and following up on their clinicians and everyone who's kind of working in the facility if they're actually using evidence-based practices.
Well, thank you so much for this work and for chatting with me today, Melanie. The judges have entered their scores and we're ready for the next competitor.
Thank you.
Cheyenne Collins, would you please turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Oh, that's great. We can hear you. Are you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Here we go.
Have you ever wondered what would happen to your body after death? Well, taphonomy is the study of everything that occurs to a set of biological remains after death and could probably tell you the answer. While taphonomy was originally developed within paleontology, it also has important implications for various other fields, including forensic anthropology. Within forensic research, wildlife and outdoor environments have been found to play an important role in the decomposition, movement, and bone destruction of human remains through a behavior we call scavenging. And understanding the scavenging patterns of various animal species in regards to human remains can help forensic professionals locate and recover scattered skeletal remains, understand the difference between scavenger damage and trauma at or around the time of death, as well as better inform estimates of the postmortem interval or time since death, all of which can assist in identifying individuals in forensic casework, as well as give light to the events that occurred prior to an individual's death. And currently, there are a few studies focusing on animal scavenging within the West Coast, and adding novel research to this body of literature will provide investigators more regionally specific insight to accurately estimate time since death and inform searches that take into account scavenging activities. In my study, I placed 6 whole hog carcasses as substitutes for humans in 2 separate outdoor environments in the summer of 2021. Game cameras were utilized throughout the study to report scavenging behaviors and monitor movement of the remains, and the study also utilized game camera data from multiple seasons in 2019 as a comparative sample. And when analyzing this data, I found quite a few scavenger species predating the remains, including gray foxes, coyotes, striped and spotted skunks, turkey vultures, possums, black bears, various small bird species, and rodent species. I also found that scavenger diversity, or how many different species of scavengers were interacting with the remains, varied depending on the season. Overall, there is less species diversity in the warmer months of the year, and that species diversity up peaks in the cooler months. And the fact that there is a higher diversity in scavenging during cooler months is consistent with the fact that there is generally lower resource availability for species during these months of the year. The scavenger species that are not obligate scavengers, but instead opportunistic, are more likely to scavenge during these low resource times. And all species in the study, except for turkey vultures, are opportunistic. We also found that turkey vultures are able to fully skeletonize a set of remains in only 24 hours, as seen on the right-hand side of this slide. In conclusion, if a body is deposited in cooler temperature months, there is a higher likelihood of scattering and disarticulation due to scavenging and a higher diversity in scavenger species. If deposited in warmer temperature months, then fewer species will opt to scavenge the remains, but skeletonization is likely to occur quickly due to turkey vulture scavenging, all of which should be taken into account when structuring searches and estimating time since death in investigations in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheyenne. While the judges are completing their scores, I'd like to ask you a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, of course.
So I've got to know, especially given the morbidity of the topic, what got you interested in studying death, decay, scavenging?
Yeah, so I like to say that I was a very odd child. I've always been fascinated with Egypt and mummies and crime scene shows as I was growing up. And I kind of always thought I would grow out of it, but I never did. And so I went to undergrad at the University of Oregon, and I actually got to do undergraduate research that fed right into this master's thesis project. So I studied decomposition in the same environment in 2019. And from that study, I found a lot of scavengers, and that wasn't part of my project at that point in time, but I wanted to study it more. And so when I came into my program here at Chico, my advisor was really great, and we built this study, and I think that the results are very interesting, and I just love all the animals. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about your location. Chico is, can you remind me, is that where you're doing the study, in that area of Northern California? Or?
So actually, no. So I did this study in the Willamette Valley of Oregon. So it's in Western Oregon, about halfway between the north and south border. However, the results of this research are applicable to Northern California as well, in that a lot of the species that I observed in our region in Oregon are similar to species that my professors here see in Northern California. And so part of my thesis is also comparing a previous study done in Northern California to see what some of those differences are between the species and similarities.
And you know, thinking about the area you're in Chico and Oregon, does that area that your study is conducted in, does it have the same fire dangers as the Chico area? And if so, how does that affect scavenging patterns? Have you seen a difference?
So to answer your first part of that question, yes, we do also have a high incidence of wildfires all around Western Oregon. I think fall of 2020, we had 3 large fires within 1 week of each other.
Wow.
And so, yes, we do have that tendency in that region. And then I personally haven't studied that, but obviously wildfires displace animals and wildlife. And so it would be anticipated that after a fire, if the wildlife in the area is moved into a different area, it means that potentially that area now has more potential scavengers. So if a body was deposited in that area, there might be a higher likelihood of and a higher density of scavenging. But yeah, that's definitely something. I know a lot of research is going into forensics in fires and wildfires right now in the state. And so hopefully scavenging will be incorporated with that in the future.
Well, thank you for chatting with me, Cheyenne. The judges have entered their scores, and we're ready for our next competitor.
Jacob Campbell, would you please turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, thank you. We can hear you. Are you ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
In 2010, 2 or more races became a required reporting category for educational institutions receiving federal funding. The CSU system collects race and ethnicity data in 2 ways via the admissions application. One asks students for their preferred race ethnicity category, while the second prioritizes the federal reporting requirements of the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System, or IPEDS. Using a sample of nearly 11,000 student records from Cal Poly, This study examined whether these two ways of categorizing mixed race students impacts the visibility of graduation gaps. Let's begin with the top half of the screen. Of 684 students who preferred to be categorized as two or more races, just half were reported as such, and about 1/3 were recategorized as Hispanic or Latino per the IPED standards. This translation impacts observed graduation rates. As shown in the bottom left, in College D, moving from preferred to reported categorization resulted in nearly 20 percentage point differences in both positive and negative directions. And this recategorization also erases statistically significant differences in the odds of graduating. In the bottom right, binary logistic regression analysis using preferred categorization yielded 8 statistically significant differences in graduation odds, while reported categorization only found 2. And in all but one case, the multiracial reference group was more likely to graduate than the comparison group. The exception, preferred categorization, shows white female students in College F are over 2 times more likely to graduate than the multiracial reference group, while reported categorization suggests that they have equal odds. Only one finding was consistent across categories. That is, the odds of Hispanic or Latino males in College C graduating were about half that of the multiracial reference group using either categorization. In this study, preferred race ethnicity categories revealed more statistically significant differences in graduation odds than did the reported categories. However, universities have greater incentive to use the latter given its relationship to federal funding. So what's the takeaway? Considering student preference regarding race and ethnicity categorization could expand university efforts to both identify and address graduation equity gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Our judges are completing their scores, and I'd like to talk with you some more about your work. We have, all of us here know that the graduation initiative is a high priority for us, and eliminating equity gaps is especially important. But it sounds like one of the takeaways from your work here is that our work might be misinformed in terms of thinking about about what the equity gaps really are and where equity gaps lie. Is that what I hear from you?
Yes, I think we could be seeing students in a different way, potentially more in line with their preference. I'm not saying that we should, do away with analysis that involves these federal reporting categories. I'm more arguing that we might be missing information if we don't use the data that we're asking students for. We ask, how do you want to be reported? And if we don't use that data, why are we collecting it? And as this study showed, just on one campus, there's significant differences depending on how you're categorizing students.
Yeah, so I'm interested to think about, to hear from you, your thoughts on how we might, if we were to use that data the way you're suggesting, and to pay greater attention to the way that students want to be identified, how might that change some of our policies or practices in terms of higher education?
Yeah, I think in the CSU system specifically, one of the big implications is this construct that's used pretty widely across the system of who is and who isn't an underrepresented minority or URM students. And so depending on how a student is treated by the federal policy, the federal standards, could impact whether or not they're considered URM or not. And as we know, a lot of resources and attention are looking at closing those equity gaps, right? And so this turns into policy initiatives, programs, looking at sort of increasing equitable access to resources, for example. And if all of that is based on these federal categories, we might be missing how students see themselves, right? And if we're thinking about culturally responsive programming or identity-informed work, we want that to be rooted in how students have asked to be known through these forms.
Yes, thank you so much for this work and for chatting with me, Jacob. The judges have entered their scores and we're ready for the next competitor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Atom Corrow, would you please turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hi. Oh, hold on. What is this saying about my video? Oh, the host is asking you to start my video. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
can hear you.
I'm ready, Dr. Vega, yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Well, and whenever you're ready, okay?
Hunters of the night, they awake as the sun goes down and fly through the darkness in search of prey. No, we're not talking about vampires. We're talking about bats. Bats comprise 1/5 of all mammal species, yet are often misunderstood by the public. Bats are ecosystem indicators, meaning that their presence or absence implies the conditions of their habitat. Importantly, we can use bats as a proxy for determining the recovery of habitats following natural disasters like fire. While wildfires are a natural part of California's landscape, the fire season in California and across the West is starting earlier and ending later each year, with climate change considered to be the key driver of this trend. The purpose of my study is to understand how bats respond to fire-affected habitats. Specifically, the aim of this project is to determine 1, how changes to density of vegetation from fire affects the activity patterns of forest-dwelling bats, and 2, how the number of bat species in a habitat changes over time due to the degree of fire severity. 17 of the 23 bat species in California use Sierra Nevada habitats. 11 of the 17 expected in Sierra Nevada parks have special status designated by federal, state, or other organizations. To evaluate the effects of burn severity on bats, we conducted acoustic surveys this summer within the SQF complex that burned in Sequoia National Forest and adjacent areas in August 2020. Acoustic monitoring is a non-invasive method that allows us to record echolocation calls, which can be used to identify different bat species by their unique echolocation signatures. Sonobat software allows us to record, process, and analyze acoustic data from bat echolocation calls, as seen on the top of my slide, where I have a call from a Yuma myotis bat. Our sonobats results show that the most easily detected species being the Mexican free-tailed, California myotis, pallid, and Yuma myotis bats. Fires alter bat foraging habitat structure by reducing clutter in the form of tree and understory vegetation density. This change causes detriment to clutter-adapted species, such as the California myotis. My preliminary results show most California myotis calls occurring in unburnt habitat and habitat with the lowest fire severity. Fire influences animals through direct mortality and indirectly through habitat alteration. This information is crucial in understanding how bats are adapting to fires, encouraging appropriate habitat management and conservation efforts of an order already facing numerous threats. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Autumn. Again, while the judges are completing their scores, I'd like to ask you a bit more about yourself.
Okay, of course.
First of all, I must know, what bat is your favorite bat? What is your favorite bat species?
Actually, my favorite bat species is the pallid bat.
Well, tell us why.
Well, I was really fortunate this past summer to actually work in Sequoia National Park. And so as I was doing my research, I had the opportunity to assist my graduate advisor, Dr. Anna Doty, on a research project that she was working on. So we had the opportunity to misnet bats, and the pallid bat is just, they're just kind of this ferocious little like beast, and they're so cute and fun, and they're also like really incredible because they just fly midair and they can sweep right onto the ground and they pick up scorpions. And if you've ever seen images of them, they're usually flying midair with just a huge scorpion hanging out of their mouth. And that's actually my next tattoo that I'm going to get because they're so incredible. I love it.
A bat with a scorpion in its mouth?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that sounds
Once I
amazing.
complete my thesis, yes, that's my goal.
That is a great reward for yourself. Is it going to be on your shoulder? Yes, nice.
Yes, it will. Mhm.
Now, I have to tell you, Autumn, I never thought I'd hear cute and fun and ferocious as equivalent description or as joint descriptions of a creature.
I think it's all my favorite personality traits. Maybe. There's something about them. Yeah, we have these adorable images because Dr. Doty, she puts little transmitters on their backs. And so when you're doing that process, you have to wrap them up in these little, what we call bat burritos. So we have all these adorable photos over the summer of them wrapped in these little canvas burritos. And all you see is this little face with their little teeth sticking out. And it's just very Instagram like worthy.
Well, I have to confess, I love watching videos of bats eating bananas.
Oh, yes. My dream is to work with the fruit bats. They just are amazing. Yes, I would love to work with that species one day.
Well, I want to ask if there's anything that you've found to be really surprising in the work that you've done.
Well, the thing about fire that's really interesting with bats is that some species actually really benefit from fires. It gives them, like these larger species actually that I was talking about, palids in particular, it clears all this vegetation. And that's where they do best for foraging and for insect prey. And so fire actually helps that for those species. So it's actually quite beneficial. So I think we always think of it's so detrimental, but actually for some species, they actually do really well in fire affected habitats.
Well, thank you for that, Autumn. The judges have entered their scores and we'll be moving to the next competitor.
Thank you so much.
Tawinderjit Kaur, are you here? Can you please turn on?
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Dr.
Okay,
Raina.
thank you so much. So ready to go?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
We have all attended gender reveal parties either in person or witnessed on various social media platforms. What does gender socialization really mean? At gender reveal parties, only two genders are mainly focused on. The color pink is associated with girls and blue represents a boy. Parents have their children's gender identity revealed even before they are born. This research defines gender socialization as a multi-layered concept that teaches newborns to perform their gender roles, and it's conveyed through family members, peers, and societal norms. Honor killing is a concept that situates women into specific gender roles. Families refuse to be associated with women who attempt to break the cycle of emotional and physical abuse and liberate shackles that get tied to them even before they arrive on Earth. The guiding research question to advance this study was, how does gender socialization impact decision-making of second-generation Punjabi women in choosing a college major and choosing a partner? The significance of this study is that it provides insight into the Punjabi community. Findings may not be generalizable and do not represent the Punjabi community as a whole. This study may become a reference to human service practitioners and allied professions for their clients who identify as Punjabi. And this study hopes to inspire more literature on communities that social work and other interdisciplinary fields have not yet centered. This study used a qualitative descriptive method to learn about gender socialization and the manner in which it influences women's decision. To be mindful of COVID-19 exposure, the focus groups took place on Zoom. 3 focus group sessions were completed with 9 total participants. There were 3 main domains used in the process of coding: universal factors, intersecting factors, and pressing factors in both selecting a college major and selecting a partner. The collected data revealed the pressing factors in selecting a college major involved seeking financial independence, location to proximity of parents, and values aligned with career field. Pressing factors in selecting a partner involved potential partner being family-oriented, understanding of cultural upbringing, and similar value system. I'd like to convey my sincere thanks to our judges and supporters. Thank you.
Thank you, Tawinder. Did I pronounce your name correct, your first name correctly?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. While the judges are completing their scores, I'd like to ask you a bit more about the work you're doing and yourself.
Yes, of course.
Can you tell us a bit about how you came to research this topic?
Yes, so initially, back in August of 2021, I had many different ideas that I wanted to go into. Initially, I had 3 research questions within one study, but after speaking to my thesis chair and my committee members, I was able to confine and narrow down my ideas. But the goal was always to study Punjabi communities because there is lack of literature focusing on this area. And the goal is not to become their voice, but rather utilize the platform given by my social work department to elevate such voices.
Thank you. And the participants in your research, were they local to your area, or were they from a range of places? Were they within the United States or outside the United States?
So interestingly, I chose purposive sampling method to recruit my participants through Instagram page. And I thought that I would only get people from Central Valley. But surprisingly, people all over the United States participated.
Wow.
So I had participants from Washington, D.C., from Washington State, from Texas. So yeah, I think our communities came together to spread the word that there is a research happening focusing on Punjabi women. So that helped.
Yes, and I'm curious about whether what surprising data did you find, right? Because a lot of times I understand that that this kind of research, you are looking for certain things, and then there are these factors that emerge surprisingly to you, and then it gives you an idea of where to move next with your research. Did you have any of those?
Yes. So one of the main interesting things that came out of my research was some of the participants labeled the focus groups as healing. So they highlighted the need for such safe spaces within the community. So that was something that stood out to me. And I'd like to connect with community-based organization within the Valley to see if we could create some pilot programs for Punjabi women.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. It reminds me a bit of feminist conscious racing groups in the 1970s and how people reported that those helped them learn new things and helped them identify phenomena that they thought was only about them that turned out to be common to many other people. Yeah, well, thank you very much. The judges have completed their scores and we're ready to have our next competitor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final competitor is Jessica Gonzalez. Would you please turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hi, everyone. I'm right here.
We can hear you. That's wonderful. Ready to go?
Yes, ready. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Gonzalez, and this research project was in collaboration with my colleague, Vivian Cardona Gonzalez. Have you ever wondered how the traumatic experiences you faced in your childhood may affect romantic relationships in adulthood? Well, we did. Past research indicates that adverse childhood experiences have significant negative impacts on your health. What are adverse childhood experiences, you may ask? Well, adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, are traumatic experiences that a child may be exposed to, such as sexual, physical, or emotional abuse and neglect, or household dysfunction. For example, divorce or substance use. There are more examples on my slide for you to view. There's a lot of research on ACEs and how they affect your physical health, mental health, and even social relationships. However, there is no current research about whether ACEs have any association with romantic relationship satisfaction in young adulthood. Our question was, do ACEs affect romantic relationship satisfaction among young adults between the ages of 18 to 30 years old? In order to test this, we conducted a study. 90 participants between the ages of 18 to 30 years old in a romantic relationship submitted their responses through an online survey via Qualtrics. We collected demographic information and used 2 standardized instruments, which have been used in previous research studies: the Adverse Childhood Experiences Questionnaire to measure ACE scores, and the Relationship Assessment Scale to measure relationship satisfaction. We divided our data into 2 groups: low ACE scores, 0 to 3, and high ACE scores, 4 and higher. And then we compared the average relationship satisfaction scores for both groups. We found a statistically significant difference between the groups. Persons who experienced higher ACEs in childhood were more likely to have lower romantic relationship satisfaction. So what does this mean? As a person experiences more traumatic events in childhood, they are more likely to be dissatisfied with their romantic relationships. In other words, childhood trauma can have lasting effects on romantic relationship satisfaction in young adulthood. Now, there are limitations to our study. Participants were recruited via social media, and our study variables were self-reported. Now, you might think, well, of course, traumatic events impact your romantic relationships. We thought that too, and we were very surprised to find out how limited the research on this topic is. Based on our study, ACEs do in fact affect romantic relationship satisfaction. Now, imagine the impacts they can also have on other parts of your lives. Sometimes we can't lessen the number of traumatic experiences or events, but what we can do is bring awareness to them and start educating young adults on finding healthy ways to cope with these traumatic events so that they can heal in order to build more satisfying relationships and healthier ones too. Who knows, maybe this awareness can also help reduce divorce rates. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jessica. I have to say that this is really intense work. Working around trauma. My own research is on sexual violence, and my spouse works with offenders in corrections and rehabilitative programs. So ACEs have a lot of going on there. But I'm just struck by this smile that you have. So I'm eager to know what you do outside of this research to keep that smile going.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You're so kind. I think one of the biggest things about being a social worker, as we know, and just in general, everything is self-care. I think that's very important. So I think that's what keeps me going. My friends, my colleagues, my cohort mates, just everyone in my program just motivates me. And I think that really helps. And above all, my family and my friends, and knowing that the work that I do is going to make a difference. So yeah.
Absolutely. So I got to know, what's your favorite self-care or your top 2 favorite self-care routines?
Yeah, no, thank you. So one of them definitely is, and I encourage this, mindfulness meditation, definitely. Morning, 3 minutes, at night, another 3 minutes. The gym, and really enjoying a good meal out at least once a week.
Yes. Well, when you go out, what's your favorite meal?
Oh, that's really good. So my favorite food is Italian food. So I would say I really enjoy pizza, spaghetti, gnocchi. So it's all of the above.
Nice. Oh, well, can you tell us a little bit about the campus and the graduate program that you're in? What do you like most about it?
Of course, yes. So thank you for asking that question. I kind of hinted at it earlier. I just think it's a very well-rounded program. The campus is amazing. It gets hot in Northridge, as we know, it's in the Valley, but it's amazing in general. I really enjoy the program itself, that it's a generalist approach to social work. So we have people that are interested in micro, meso, and macro. So, hoping that we get great therapists, and then we get people that are policy makers out there and making a difference statewide and hopefully nationwide.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. The scores are in, and I appreciate chatting with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, that was terrific. I hope all of you in the audience enjoy watching the students' great presentations as much as I did.
Okay, well, I'm very excited to share that the judges' results are in and the audience choice winner is in. And the audience choice winner is Alyssa Cooper.
And the second place winner is
Jacob Campbell. And last but definitely not least, the first place winner is
Jessica Gonzalez.
Congratulations.
If our winners would like to activate their cameras and wave to be acknowledged, please do so now. Congratulations to our winners.
Jessica, Jacob, and Alyssa, we would love to see you on screen. Congratulations to all three of you and to all other participants. Before we conclude, I want to acknowledge the large number of people across the CSU system that came together to make this event a reality.
First and foremost, importantly, thanks and congratulations to all of our student participants. Your iridescent energy and grace make me proud to be associated with the CSU system.
I also want to acknowledge with gratitude our distinguished judges, without whom this event would have not been possible. And a special thank you to Interim Chancellor Koester and CSUB President Zelezny for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks also to the members of the event steering committee who spent months planning this Grad Slam. We are so very grateful to the Chancellor's office for sponsoring this event.
And finally, a huge thank you to the logistics magicians who pulled everything together. This was a very hardworking team of people, but I especially want to thank Luis Vega, Adrian Silva, Martha Manriquez, and Logan Rysek for going above and beyond the call of duty to make this event a success.
And to you, our audience, thank you for your participation and attending. What a great showcase of the student research and creative activity across the CSU. We hope you have enjoyed being part of the second annual CSUB Grad Slam. Please take a few moments to complete a survey using the QR code posted on the screen.
We look forward to seeing you all at next year's Grad Slam. Thanks again, everyone. Congratulations to all the winners and have a great day.